Hello everyone, Razorblade Mango here, and today I want to talk about PlayStation, which is a topic that some of you might be sick of seeing appear on this channel within the last year or so. But with all the major shakeups that have happened at the company within the last few months, particularly the layoffs that happened this year and the announcement and subsequent departure of Mr. Jimmy Boy Ryan himself, I figured it was a good time, now that at the time that this video will come out, Jim Ryan will be gone from the company, and in his place will be the interim CEO, one named Hiroki Totoki. So I think the most obvious thing with Jim Ryan leaving is that now that more information has come to light regarding how much was being spent on things like the live service initiative that Ryan pushed, among other things, I think it's obvious that this was not a voluntary, or at least a completely voluntary retirement from the company. I don't think it's a conspiracy at this point to suggest that he might have been coerced out of his position as CEO of PlayStation by the higher-ups at Sony, because as it was revealed in the financial reports, their profit margins are so damn thin because of how much they've been spending over the last few years. And it really says something about how a company has been operating, to where I agree with a big corporate suit coming in and seeing how their business is being ran and making some changes. It's not often I do that. It's very rare, actually, for me to say, you know what? I think the corporate business money guy is actually onto something here. Because, again, I think it was obvious that this live service initiative was failing and not going very well for PlayStation, because they started out with a ridiculous goal, which was to have 12 of these fucking things out by fiscal year 2025 or 2026, which is insane. And then not only to hear that, but to also find out that a lot of these games within this initiative have been canceled or not received very well. You know, we had the cancellations of things like The Last of Us Factions, the cancellation of Twisted Metal, cancellation of London's co-op fantasy game along with that entire studio, the leaked Spider-Man The Great Web game from Insomniac, which got canceled, and the Deviation Games project. And I'm sure there are some other live services that have probably gotten canceled that we will maybe never find out about. So that's a lot of wasted money right there. And I can only imagine the kind of scrutiny that Jim Ryan must have been getting towards the very end, because I'm willing to bet that the reason he got the job as PlayStation CEO and Sean Layden was kicked out is that he must have sold some kind of utopian live service vision to the corporate bigwigs at Sony by saying things like, oh, you know, if we pivot more into live service territory, we can really make a lot of money. We could double or even triple our profits. We'll have endless revenue from all these live services. I bet this pitch came at a time during 2018, 2019, when the industry was much more on board with live services as a thing compared to how it is now. And I bet Sony bigwigs just looked at Jim Ryan's vision and went, yep, sounds good to us. More profits, getting rid of all our smaller niche stuff that doesn't sell well. Get that Sean Layden guy out of here, put Jim Ryan in there, boom. Get all these fucking dumbass low budget games. We don't need that shit anymore. We're all in on the big AAA games and the big live services. And what they didn't realize at the time, and what Sean Layden actually prophetically stated back then, is that AAA games are gonna hit a bit of a problem later on with how the budgets are being ballooned out of control. And another thing that they couldn't have foreseen back then, but I guess I did. Again, I'm not a business guy or a finance guy, but I saw where this was going, where live services are not the be-all, end-all of corporate salvation that they were predicted to be 5 years ago. And now we're seeing companies pay the price, including big established companies pay the price for chasing the gold rush of the live service thing. And with Hiroki Totoki coming in as the interim CEO, to me, that specific person coming in signifies that PlayStation absolutely wants to get a hold on their finances, because they spent a lot of money on this live service initiative. And they spend a lot of money on their big AAA single-player games with lavish production value and high-quality talent and amazing graphics and all that shit. But I bet it was the live service thing that pushed Jim Ryan out the door. And, you know, as they say, the chickens have finally come home to roost in that regard. It's just unfortunate that Jim Ryan's big, costly, short-sighted mistake has resulted in hundreds of people being laid off, and PlayStation not only burning through lots of money, but also just wasting valuable time during this generation that could have been better spent on developing more interesting single-player games and new IPs. So now that Jim Ryan is gone, what do I see for the future of PlayStation? Well, I see a thankful stepping back of how gung-ho they were about live services. I don't think live services are going to be going away from PlayStation's future, but as I said in my Helldivers 2 video, I have to imagine that they might be looking at the success of that game and using it maybe as a model for how they should be approaching live services. Because in a way, with Helldivers 2, they kind of have what they wanted. They don't have the big Fortnite level live service, but they have, in a strange way, they got almost what I would consider the best case scenario out of a live service game, where it's a smaller budgeted, more niche game that found a modest audience. But the only thing that I couldn't have foreseen, and Sony clearly didn't foresee coming, was how popular it would turn out to be. And here we are, where they've canceled pretty much all the live services that I would have almost all the live services that I would have expected to be successes, like Factions, like Twisted Metal. I think the only one left out of that initial bunch that I see any kind of big success for is the Horizon multiplayer games that are coming out from Guerrilla and NCSoft. But all the others that they still have on the burner, I mean, at the time of recording this, we still don't know dick about Concord coming from Firewalk Studios, so I have no idea if that's even going to be all that good. And then we have the garish, generic-looking Fair games that's still bafflingly in development. And I have a feeling that's in development only because they have to feel the need to justify spending money on acquiring the studio Haven that's behind it, which that leads me to another point about Jim Ryan's tenure, is that for all the shit, the rightful shit that I give Jim Ryan, I do think that part of his legacy was successful in that he got some studios under Sony's umbrella that I felt like should have been under their umbrella a long time ago, like Blue Point, like Housemarque. I thought the acquisition of Nixxes, the PC port studio, was very wise. I thought getting Valkyrie Entertainment in there was very wise as a support studio that they can have in-house. But then there are others where I really strongly question why they bother to acquire them after not proving themselves at all. Like, for example, the aforementioned Haven, which to this day I'm still just I'm very deeply confused as to why they purchased Haven when I see just Drek like Fair Games. I don't get it, honestly. I look at a company like Firewalk, which we haven't seen a single morsel of footage from Concord other than the CGI trailer with the jiggly burger physics and space. Oh my god, that tells me so much about that game. I don't get it. Other than the fact that it was, a time where they saw that Microsoft was acquiring things and they thought to themselves, oh, we need to start acquiring things too. Which, it got the ball rolling on things like Housemarque and Bluepoint, and that's fine. But then you have the other side of it where you just get baffling acquisitions like Haven and Firewalk, Firesprite as well, which has now significantly toned down the amount of employees and projects that it's got in the works, which that was a studio that I was very confused as to why they acquired them, because they had, one game under their belt that they fully developed in the Persistence, which is not a good game at all in my opinion, and then they co-developed the Horizon VR game that bombed with Gorilla for PSVR 2. Yeah, let's acquire that team. And now Twisted Metal is gone, and now the only game they seem to have in development is this survival horror game that's supposedly based on an old Sony IP or something, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if we're actually going to see that this year, because now my predictions for Sony's showcase just flew out the fucking window with the whole announcement of that Ballistic Moon is working on the Until Dawn remaster / quasi remake, and then the fact that Firesprite got gutted and Twisted Metal is dead. And what I consider the biggest fucking stupid acquisition of them all, Bungie, which, man, you talk about somebody not doing their due diligence when it comes to research, and man, what a horrible acquisition for them. I mean, just, they have delivered absolutely nothing for PlayStation yet, and they themselves were given so much freedom to work with. They were given so much independence, and yet it's obvious at this point that they have their own internal problems at Bungie. And I can only imagine how much worse it would have been for Bungie if Sony hadn't come in and give them a big influx of cash in the $3.6 or $3.7 billion or something stupid like that, which the amount of games that they could have made for $3 billion, it makes my eyes twitch when I think about it. And yet they pissed it all away on this fucking lame ass, annoying, vindictive, stupid ass studio in the form of Bungie. It's just, man, what a stupid, horrible mistake that was. And I just, especially with the announcement recently that Marathon is going through its own troubles, and then the pre-order numbers for the Final Shape, Destiny 2's latest expansion, are soft, and it's just, man, what a fucking terrible decision it was to acquire Bungie. And then another element I see with PlayStation in the future is that I think that they, thankfully, now that Hiroki Totoki is going to be in charge and have a bigger hand in the finances of PlayStation, I think they will hopefully be a lot more smart about their finances when it comes to these big, lavish AAA games. Because as I've said repeatedly now, under the Jim Ryan tenure, they tended to focus a lot on two types of games, almost exclusively. Big AAA budget single-player games and live services. And both of those have their own sets of problems that have been exacerbated with the other issues, such as the post-COVID bubble popping, the increasing costs across the board for everything, the growing sense of competition in a landscape that is just being flooded with games in this day and age. And all of this really shows when you consider that the output from PlayStation's first party team has just been weak by the typical console generation standards. It's just, I'm not saying the quality of the games have been weak. I'm saying as far as the quantity of them. And this is why they have had to prioritize things like getting more remasters or more remakes out the door, and having games that aren't creatively risky because they've poured too much money into them and stuff like that. And it's just been a mess this generation. And I gave this generation's output the benefit of the doubt during the first 2 years. But it really opened my eyes to what kind of problems PlayStation must be internally going through because of that showcase last year. When you're in your third full year of a generation, and I still don't know what your roadmap is, that's bad. That's a very bad sign. And I give Xbox a lot of shit for announcing too many games too soon, but at least I have a clear roadmap of what Xbox's future looks like, at least this year and then the year after. I can't say the same thing for PlayStation, and that's concerning. And if they do end up doing a showcase this year, which after the layoffs and after all the shit that I've heard, I have doubts they're even going to do a showcase this year. But if they end up doing one, you can expect another dry year like last year, guys. I really do think that's going to be the case. We might get some decent things in it, like the new Team Asobi game, maybe. But don't be going into there expecting a big reveal from Sony Santa Monica or Ghost of Tsushima 2, which I don't understand where this is coming from all of a sudden that Ghost of Tsushima 2 is going to be in this showcase this year. I really doubt it's going to be there, other than maybe at best you're going to get a CG trailer for it. And finally, I want to talk about what I think is going to happen with Sony's single-player games, which I'm of two minds about this, where the optimist in me hopes that Totoki or whoever the new CEO is going to be after he's done being the interim one will come in and use the Sean Layden handbook. And what I mean by that is they do a nice balance of both the big AAA, lavishly budgeted single-player games, which, despite everything I've said, I don't want those to go away. I just want those to improve and get better. But at the same time, you can balance out the length that it takes for these to come out with the smaller, more risky, creative single-player games. They don't have to cost like $100 million to produce. You can come out with some weird niche things that I think will not sell big, but they'll give players something to play in between the big AAA games in the time that it takes for the second party and the first party ones to come out. And I thought Sony did that marvelously during the mid to late PS3 era and the early to mid PS4 generation as well, before they kind of started to adapt this new approach after Ryan's encroaching slimy influence on PlayStation's output. However, the pessimist in me, and the pessimist is the one that usually wins out when it comes to the video game industry, is that I think they are going to just probably stick with what they're doing as far as the quantity. I think the budgets will grow smaller, but I think, unfortunately, the output is going to continue to be as paltry as it's been over the last few years. Because I don't see modern PlayStation, even post Jim Ryan, embracing smaller, more niche games. You'll get an occasional one here and there, probably. By niche, I mean something like Death Stranding 2, which will definitely alienate some people, just like the first one did. You'll probably get a little strange, smaller game from Team Asobi, which I'm very much looking forward to, whatever it is. I hope Housemarque comes out with another weird game like Returnal was, and I hope whatever Bluepoint is working on turns out really good as well. It's just, I don't really have much hope for things returning like the way they were during the, again, mid PS3 to mid PS4 time frame, because that is the time frame where I thought it was the golden era of PlayStation. And now it's just this weird post-corporate, cold, calculated thing that Jim Ryan brought to the equation, and it just, it's PlayStation trying to be like Apple, or trying to be this big tech company where they're like, oh, come look at our slick, shiny products, and we give out interviews to fucking GQ and NBC and stuff like that, which sucks. So I highly doubt the personality is ever going to come back to PlayStation. I just hope that they get a handle on how these single player games are made, and hopefully inject some kind of life and personality back into them. Because as good as some of these games are right now, and I think things like God of War Ragnarok is a damn good game, but it is lacking in personality compared to some of the other games that have come before it, or hell, even during the PS5 generation, like Astro's Playroom and Returnal, and hell, even like Helldivers, I guess. I think Helldivers is the most anti-PlayStation thing they've released like in years, and that works in their favor because it makes their output feel fresh, like they've injected some kind of new blood into the kind of shit that they normally do. So hopefully PlayStation gets a grip now that Jim Ryan is out the building. They can clean up the mess that he had, and they can hopefully get back on track and release more good single player games like Astro's Playroom and Returnal, and get some decent to good live services in there like Helldivers 2. And you know what? I still have hope for that Guerrilla Games Horizon multiplayer game that's coming out, because that's still a concept that I think could really work. But we'll see. I am forever a pessimist on PlayStation now. So prove me wrong, guys. I hope they do. Anyway, thank you so much for chatting with me today, and I will catch you all next time. See ya!